Welcome into Protect and Grow Chicagoland Retirement with Chicagoland's certified financial planning professional, Tim Stearns, CFP, as your guide, ladies and gentlemen, to the complex financial, economic, and investment world, helping you plan and prepare for your financial future with the Protect and Grow written retirement blueprint that you can find there at TJ Stearns Inc., Chicagoland's resource for proactive planning guidance. And if you would like to get your plan together, Tim Stearns is always just a shout away. Pick up the phone, give them a call. 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. Tim, what's new in your world?
Not much. We are talking to people a lot about Social Security and Medicare. And I like to think almost going back to the basics. The foundation of retirement income is Social Security. And I think a lot of people take it for granted.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I don't think people understand what a great foundation it is.
Yeah. Well, I know you typically start us off with a tip of the week. Don't overlook the time to dedicate to Social Security to make the most of it, right?
Well, I mean, look at their website. It says in 15 minutes, you can decide your future. I mean, you put 35 years at least into building this thing. I think it should take a little more than 15 minutes of your time to decide which way to trigger and turn this on. So we are telling people, take a little bit more than that. Take some pause because what you do can affect your retirement and your spouse's.
Yeah, absolutely. And the taxes that you pay and the
Oh yeah.
income that you rely on from your investments. So you're draining those down quicker or preserving them and protecting
Yeah,
them,
sure.
depending on how effectively you've made these decisions. So absolutely worth the time to dedicate to making a well thought through and informed decision, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we'll be talking about today: the ins, the outs, the pros, the cons, the timing, and the coordination of your entitlement benefits, Social Security and Medicare, making the most of them in retirement. And again, if you've got questions, if you would like to dedicate that time to making sure you are making an informed, well thought through decision, give Tim Stearns, CFP, a call. 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. Tim, before we jump in, though, I got to say, I've been seeing you all over the news. You are Chicagoland's star right now on the news. It seems like you're everywhere.
Well, I've been doing a lot of work with WGN Radio and WGN TV as well. They look for us to talk about different items that are going on, segments on retirement. I think there's a lot of people that need help, and a lot of baby boomers are kind of in a quandary as to what the right moves are in retirement. And they don't want to make mistakes, and I'm happy to help give my 32 years of expertise out there.
Yeah, great. And I know most of those appearances are about kind of perspective on headlines or more exciting market movements or what's
Sure.
Iran going to do next and who knows there, right? But
Right.
today, boring old Social Security and Medicare. Now, these are foundational components of retirement. Like you said, we're getting to the basics here. So maybe not as exciting, but man, are these important topics. And Tim, you see a lot of people making mistakes with Social Security, unfortunately.
Well, the number one I'm going to say right away is taking it too early. I mean, there are times if you are, I'll give you an example. We had a family friend. She had a heart condition. She didn't have a lot of assets. She couldn't work anymore. She had to turn it on early. She wasn't married. She didn't have any children. It was time to do that. But that was her quandary. She couldn't do anything. But for most people, there's other assets. What you're going to do is going to affect your spouse. We're going to tell people, if you turn it on at 62, you're going to have a reduced benefit for the rest of your life.
Well, isn't that typically the case, Tim, that they made it available early for cases of necessity like that? And in fact, isn't there like penalties if you are not in a situation of necessity? If you just rush out and claim it early, there are several implications to that are not necessarily in your favor.
Well, the best word you just used is necessity. We had another example. We had a woman come in the other day who wanted to do that. The household is making over $360,000. And we explained to her, if you turn that on, her husband's money is going to get taxed. 85% of that is going to be, she didn't even realize that.
Hmm.
So it made no sense for them to turn it on early, and it was not a necessity.
Yeah.
So we stopped them in their tracks from doing that. So the one thing that we try to tell people, and we advocate in our book that we wrote, wait for your full retirement age at least,
Yeah.
and make sure that you get your standard benefit.
So not just a simple decision of should I take it early or should I wait
No.
and delay. Monthly income is obviously impacted, the taxation, the survivorship income, the overall retirement income strategy. There are key considerations with Social Security. And Tim, we already sort of touched on here the timing, early, full retirement age, late, but talk about what that decision is going to kind of cascade and domino effect into, if you would.
Well, I mean, you're looking at longevity protection, which would be higher benefits later that protect against, you living longer. People are living longer and longer. We have a nice report that we can run for people that shows, if you wait longer, which, you might get into the checkbook of Social Security, like you might cross over into where you're getting more out of it than you put into it. COLA adjustments, annual increases, they can help offset your inflation, though not perfectly. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. But you also have what you're going to do is going to affect your spouse and survivor benefits. So you have one spouse's decision impacts the other. So the surviving spouse keeps the higher benefit when the one passes away.
Mhm.
So, this timing impacts everything. Longevity increases value of delaying. And then, of course, you have the spousal planning. It's critical to the whole thing. And that's why this report can help with that.
Well, Tim, to the point on cola, a couple, I guess, follow-ups there is that if we have delayed and our benefit as a result is higher, and the same cola is applied across the system, if it's a 2.8% cost of living adjustment, but our benefit is 40,000 versus 20,000, that means it's a even larger dollar increase because our benefit is higher, right? Is that we waited and then we get additional benefits from that along the way with each and every cola because they're adjusting off of an already higher amount. And then on the other side of that, it's not going to cover all of inflation for most people because only the part of our income covered by Social Security is inflation adjusted, which does mean that that cola is valuable, but even more valuable if we've waited for a larger amount.
Right. And all these things, are baked into it. So again, when you run a report for people, and you can do one on the Social Security website if you want to get a kind of a vanilla based one, where ours is a little more robust. It will show, what you're leaving on the table, literally money wise. So I think that's, it's worth doing that and doing the exercise. That's why, again, going back to the 15 minutes it takes to turn it on. I mean, you can make a really bad decision in 15 minutes,
I've made a couple
right?
of those, Tim.
Yeah, right. I think we all have. But when it comes to Social Security, you could be leaving a lot of money on the table.
Well, and 15 being a good number here, I know most of your clients fall into the category where their Social Security is going to be taxable. But 15% of it could not be taxable, right? Only 85%. So
Right.
again, if we've waited for a higher benefit, that means more of our income might be tax-free, Tim.
That's exactly right. And you want to coordinate this with IRA withdrawals. You might even have some pension income in there. You have capital gains without planning. The taxes can erode the value of your benefit.
Mm-hmm. And then Tim, I think we've covered a good base for Social Security, but again, you've got these reports that you can help run for people, crunch their numbers, input their data, their ages, help them to coordinate their spousal benefits and timing, and then also incorporate the rest of their financial picture with which those calculators that are available online and the 15 minutes right there at Social Security do none of that. They do not incorporate the individual's circumstances or the rest of their financial situation. You do that there at TJ Stearns Inc.
Well, one of the episodes we just did on WGN was talking about how, it's not all, nothing's in a vacuum nowadays. It's not your grandparents' retirement. You know, one decision here is going to affect stuff over there. And that brings us to our next thing when we're talking about Medicare. And we're talking about Medicare costs and IRMA.
Yeah. Well, if you want that Social Security report, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to crunch the numbers, make sure you are making a well thought through decision, which, by the way, can mean several hundreds of thousands of additional dollars in
Yep.
your retirement that either comes from Social Security or comes from your nest egg or just isn't there at all. And I know which one I'd prefer, but it's worth the time to invest to get that analysis on your Social Security done. And Tim Stearns, CFP, and the team from TJ Stearns Inc. can help you with that. 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. So Tim, IRMA, a term none of us want to know about, none of us want to encounter, and yet so many of us are. And I worry that it could only get worse from here.
Well, it's interesting to me. Many people don't even know what it means. And IRMA stands for the Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, better known as a surcharge that the government puts on Medicare that if you make too much money, they're going to charge you more when you go into retirement
Hmm.
for the cost of Medicare.
And they don't tell us much about this before we get there, before it hits us in the face.
No, and they don't explain to you that it's a 2 year look back. So you have someone who retires at age 65 to go on Medicare, and they're looking back at age 63 what they made.
Now, Tim, even more information that they do not tell us is that with proper planning, this is controllable.
Yeah.
Even if we are going to encounter it, maybe we can condense the time and control the damage here from IRMA.
Yes, yes, you can. And there's the 2 year look back is damning, but you can actually try to control the narrative by making sure that you don't take out too much and pop yourself up into these areas where it's going to be, you and your wife are each going to be paying more for the Medicare.
So we know that our base insurance coverage is going to be Medicare primarily after
Yep.
65. If we are not any longer working, we don't have a workplace plan or covered through a spouse's plan. Medicare is that insurance, but it's not free. I mean, the part A is, part B and D are not free, and then they have these surcharges, and they don't cover everything. This is literally just, we're talking about here your premium monthly payments. You still have copays and deductibles and expenses beyond just these premium payments. A lot of people don't realize that, Tim.
Right. Or vision or, hearing aids, which are so expensive.
Dental, yeah, because
Yeah.
hearing and chewing and and seeing aren't health related at all, Tim.
Yeah. Right. Right. There's a lot of catch-alls, right, that they're not telling you about.
And then, Tim, ultimately, the biggest variable question mark in here, Medicare does not address long-term care. We're talking about the base routine care, doctor's visits, and hospital visits, short-term hospital visits, but not long-term care, which is one of the biggest concerns, I think, for retirees, what that potential cost could be. So need to do some careful planning there.
Well, you figure 7 out of 10 Americans over the age of 60 are going to need long-term care, and 9 out of 10 of them have not addressed that. And more importantly, some of them still think that Medicare has some type of coverage for this, and they don't.
You scare
Scary.
me with those stats every time you mention them, Tim. And then you go further in talking about what that could cost when we are not protected against it. And
Right.
man, that's not an insignificant price tag if we do encounter this. But you've got some planning structures, methodologies, options that you include there in that Protect and Grow written retirement blueprint that can help people preemptively plan for and address those kind of expenses.
Well, I mean, these are the things that we do when we're doing the Protect and Grow plan is we don't leave any rock uncovered. You need to make sure that we're addressing income. It's not just stocks and bonds is one of the big things we tell people nowadays. You need to know where you're going to be having your coverage for long-term care, Medicare, all that good stuff.
Well, now for the good news. Once we hit 65, maybe a little more aches and pains every morning getting out of bed, but we've got some
Fair.
extra deductions and benefits, right, Tim? And now
Right.
even more with that one big beautiful bill. I think many seniors are looking at past year's tax return saying, well, I did better than in previous years.
Well, you have, if you're over the age of 65 through 2028, you have another $6,000 per person in the house that you can do a deduction. So that's nice. And that's one, but that's only through 2028.
Yep. So not as permanent as they made it out to be, Tim.
No, nothing is in Washington, D.C., as we've seen time and time again.
Well, the big picture here, the takeaway, ladies and gentlemen, coordination of all of these things is key. It's critical. And Tim, not just coordination of these items alone by themselves, coordination of the big picture. How will each of these entitlement benefits fit in to our situation, our plan, and ultimately impact our investments and assets along the way?
Well, let's connect some dots here. Social Security will affect taxes. Taxes affect Medicare premiums. Income decisions affect everything. So again, when you're making these decisions, they're not in a vacuum. They're going to affect everything that you're doing. And that's why, it's not just stocks and bonds anymore. It's everything that you need to take a look at.
Now, I'm going to go even a step further in this path of dominoes, Tim, is if we're paying more for Medicare than we expected, we've got to draw those dollars out from from elsewhere, probably your IRA. So now you've got even more taxes. If you have a medical expense, a significant one, you've got to draw those dollars out of probably your IRA. So again, even more taxes, which could cause higher IRMA brackets. If you get to RMD age and have to pull money out of your IRA, that can impact your Medicare premiums and IRMA. It's all interconnected. You can't look at it in a vacuum. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you want to get with a experienced, qualified professional, a certified financial planning professional. Tim Stern, CFP, is your resource. Chicagoland area, located conveniently in Arlington Heights, but of course, helping numerous savers and investors, all kinds of proactive planners. Thousands have attended Tim's classes all throughout the Chicagoland area. They've helped tens of thousands of families be more educated about retirement, and they can help you as well. Pick up the phone, give a call, 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. Social Security, Medicare, just the tip of the iceberg, but important pieces that can really have widespread, broad spreading, impacts on your retirement. So make sure you're making good decisions there. It's just the start of that Protect and Grow written retirement blueprint. You can get yours, no cost to that. It is a courtesy service that Tim Stearns, CFP, and the team at TJ Stearns Inc. offer to put that together for you. Start the conversation by giving a call, 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. Tim, earlier in the program, you mentioned your book, Solving the Modern Retirement Riddle. That's another great start.
I think it is. I think it's for the layman at home, that want to understand how to get through a 30+ year retirement. It's not your mom and dad's retirement anymore. And it talks about all the coordination of these things because everything is connected. There's isolated decisions. They create, inefficiencies, and the coordination of these things is going to improve your outcomes for retirement. We talk about all that in the book.
Tim, have you thought about doing an update now that we are seeing the impacts of that one big, beautiful bill?
Yes, we are going to come out with a second edition of it, and we're going to have that chapter in there so that people can get educated on it, because I'm finding a lot of people don't know about it.
And then after 2028, when everything expires, we're just going to have to go and remove that update. How will we handle it, Tim?
We'll go back to the other one. There you go.
Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like a copy of that book, I know Tim always has a few around the office, and I'm sure that if you're interested in solving your own retirement riddle, that reading the book, Solving the Retirement Riddle, would be a great start, as well as getting your Protect and Grow written retirement blueprint. So pick up the phone, give a call, just have a chat, a conversation with Tim and the team. They'd love to hear from you, help you any way they can. They're in the business of solving problems and instilling confidence with your money. 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. Tim, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Tune into Chicagoland certified financial planner Tim Stearns' full radio program and visit tjstearns.com for many valuable resources, including other great episodes of Chicagoland Retirement. Be sure to subscribe.
Investment advisory services offered through Cornerstone Securities, LLC. The information presented on this program is provided for informational purposes only without warranty of accuracy, completeness, or suitability for particular purpose. This program is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. This information is general in nature, not specific enough to be construed as advice. You should not make any decision based on the information presented on this program without independent consultation with an appropriately licensed professional or competent advisor. Investment in securities or the market involves a potential risk for loss of principal. Trading, therefore, may not be suitable for all listeners. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals of growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs.